All right, we have some breaking news. MAGA Mike Johnson is scrambling to keep his coalition together as we have new reporting that more congressional Republicans are considering retiring following Marjorie Taylor Greene's lead and therefore nuking the slim majority that Donald Trump and MAGA Mike Johnson hold right now. Just keep in mind, a few weeks ago, Marjorie Taylor Greene shocked everybody by resigning because of a few reasons. First of all, she said the threats from Trump and MAGA, like her own side, were too much to handle after her splintering with Trump on the Epstein files. She also said the gridlock in Congress had her quite pessimistic. And then there's also this third underlying vibe of a broader congressional race for Senate, maybe even a race for governor that Marjorie wants to jump into. But now we have more Republicans that are increasingly disillusioned with the way the party is going. And this is happening not only with Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene, but reportedly a lot of women Republicans are outraged at Mike Johnson, and he's losing control of his caucus. We saw MAGA Mike Johnson directly lose control of his caucus when every single Republican in the House, save one, voted to release the files after he spent months lobbying against the release of the files, shutting the government down and stopping Adelita Grijalva from being sworn in so he didn't have to release the files. We're going to break down MAGA Mike Johnson and all of his mistakes in just one moment, but I want to back up for 1 second because the MAGA coalition is splintering in a few regards. Republican Senator Rand Paul is now jumping on a resolution to limit Donald Trump's power and return wartime powers back to Congress. Take a listen to Rand Paul speaking about Pete Hegseth's likely illegal strikes.
In this sense, it looks to me like they're trying to pin the blame on somebody else and not them. There's a very distinct statement that was said on Sunday. Secretary Hegseth said he had no knowledge of this and it did not happen. It was fake news. It didn't happen. And then the next day from the podium of the White House, they're saying it did happen. So either he was lying to us on Sunday or he's incompetent and didn't know it had happened. Do we think there's any chance that on Sunday the Secretary of the Defense did not know there had been a second strike?
No, it's a rhetorical question, but the answer to the question is no. There is no chance that Pete Hegseth was in the dark. I don't care how incompetent you are. Pete Hegseth knew, and he was lying. I mean, he's also incompetent. That's just a side thing. But he lied to the American people, and then they had to backtrack, likely when they realized, oh shit, this investigation is mounting. They're going to find the footage. Then Senator Rand Paul, with a few other people, a few other senators, introduced a War Powers Act. McGovern, Massey, Castro, Rand Paul, a few others introduce bipartisan war powers resolution to block Trump administration's escalating hostilities towards Venezuela. Representative Jim McGovern, ranking members of the House Rules Committee and chair of the Tom Lomos Human Rights Commission, and a bunch of others, Republicans and Democrats, came together to limit Donald Trump's wartime powers. They're essentially saying you cannot just strike not only ships in the Caribbean, but Venezuela itself. Donald Trump is mounting a row of ships around the Venezuelan coast to not only intimidate them, but reportedly strike them eventually, which would be a direct war. And listen, presidents since the Bush era have sort of abused their striking powers and their drone powers to, extend outside the outer limits and maybe push the boundaries. But what Trump's doing is unilaterally starting a war without Congress. That is different than drone strikes being pushed to their limit during the first Trump term. This is a war that is illegal, that we don't quite fully understand. It seems like it's very likely for oil, right? They're saying it's just a simple regime change, which is already sketchy, but it seems like it is yet another ploy for a Republican administration to drag us into war for oil, this time with no congressional approval. So Republican senators, people that were in the MAGA coalition, are starting to splinter. Of course, Democrats are hopping along as well. Finally, for the first time, people in Congress are splitting with the Donald Trump MAGA power structures and trying to protect the United States' best interests. Listen, if we have to go to war with Venezuela for some reason, then it should be easy to go through Senate, and Senate can confirm that we are at war. But there is no reason right now. There is no legitimate reason. That's why Donald Trump is doing it unilaterally. Just like there was no legitimate reason for him to place tariffs and he did it without the Senate, and now the tariffs are getting struck down. He is doing these things illegally over and over, and the Senate is finally challenging the MAGA power structure. At the same time this is happening, the House is challenging the MAGA Mike Johnson MAGA power structure. Republican anger erupts at Johnson as party frets about future. Listen to this. Representative Elise Stefanik of New York called Speaker Mike Johnson a habitual liar. Elise Stefanik has really been going ham at Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. I've been wanting to cover this, but it's just such inside baseball Republican drama that I've been more busy covering Hegseth and the Epstein files. But I'm going to make a video on this. Drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more coverage of all of the breaking news going on. It really means a lot when you subscribe to the Adam Mockler feed. But to continue, Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina has told people she is frustrated with the Louisiana Republican Mike Johnson and sick of the way he has run the House, particularly how women are treated there. And she is planning to huddle with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia next week to discuss following her lead and retiring early from Congress. One more time, Representative Nancy Mace is huddling with MTG to discuss following her lead and retiring early, which would legitimately just nuke the Republican majority, the slim Republican majority in the House. They would be cooked. What about Representative Anna Paulina Luna of Florida, who has gone around Mr. Johnson in a bid to force a vote that he has declined to schedule on a bill to ban members of Congress trading stock? It's like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is almost comically evil. Here's the thing about him. He's like a smooth guy. This will make people mad, but he's a smooth guy. I've talked to people in Congress too, and he's like a warm, welcoming guy behind the scenes. You almost have to be to rise to power like that. But beyond his weird, smooth slickness that he tries to give off, it's like he tries to give off this Southern charm, but when you look at the substance of every single action he takes, it's despicable. He'll be asked about pedophilia, and he'll say, I didn't hear anything about that. The next day, he'll be asked about blatant corruption coming from Trump. He'll say, I didn't know anything about that. While that's happening, he'll be blocking an investigation into Matt Gaetz, for example, when Matt Gaetz was accused of Venmoing 17-year-old girls, and it was proven to be true. Then he'll block an investigation into the Epstein files. Then he'll block a bill that stops members of Congress from profiting on stocks illegally in a crazy, like, inside trader way. He blocks that. Then he blocks Adelita Grijalva from being sworn in. Just an overall evil human being. His Southern charm that he tries to give off does not override the vile policies that he pushes. Less than a year out from midterm elections, in which Republicans' vanishingly small majority is at stake, Mr. Johnson's grasp on his gavel appears weaker than ever, as members from all corners of his conference openly complain about his leadership. Maybe even campaign against him eventually. Some predict that he may not last as a speaker for the rest of the term. Another devastating poll shows that even Trump voters blame him for the most painful of prices. The MAGA base is rapidly turning on Donald Trump over the cost of living crisis. Nearly half of Americans say it's the worst they've ever seen, and many blame it on Donald Trump. The broader point that I'm trying to make here is that a lot of the pillars of MAGA are beginning to fall. The Senate never challenging Trump was key to his MAGA agenda, and now the Senate is challenging Trump because he's trying to start a war. MAGA Mike Johnson having a consistent power block in Congress that, yes, included women, you have to treat women fairly, Mike Johnson, that dissolving out of his hands is not good for the MAGA movement. It's crazy that Mike Johnson thinks he can just get away with mistreating people. Less than a year out from the midterms, it's vanishing, their majority. And Republican women have been particularly mad at Mike Johnson. Their dissatisfaction is indicative of a broader splintering of a restive group of GOP lawmakers who are perpetually unhappy with their leaders, but appear to be reaching a breaking point with the current man at the top. Quote, rarely have things been completely harmonious in the conference, but it does seem like there's an unusually high level of discontent. We're going to continue to cover this on a day in and day out basis. I will see you all in the next video, and peace out.